Hello and welcome to another episode of the Halloween Podcast. I am your host, Lyle Perez, and you're listening to episode 47 of our special series, The Dark Record, where we uncover history's eeriest stories, one strange and unsettling case at a time. In the 1970s Germany, a young woman's terrifying experiences would blur the line between faith and medicine. Over 10 months, she underwent dozens of Catholic exorcisms as her health declined in a battle between the spiritual and the scientific. To some, she was possessed by demons. To others, she was failed by modern medicine. The next entry into the dark record, The Exorcism of Anneliese Michel. Let's begin. Anneliese Michel was born on September 21, 1952 in Leibelfing, Bavaria, West Germany. She grew up in a deeply religious Catholic family, one that held faith at the center of everyday life. Her parents, Joseph and Anna Michel, raised her and her three sisters with strict moral expectations. Religious devotion wasn't just encouraged in the Michel household, it was expected. Daily prayers, regular church attendance, and confession were part of her upbringing. Those who knew her described Anneliese as quiet, well-mannered, and devout. She was a good student, active in her church, and dreamed of becoming a teacher. But behind the outward image of a normal, faithful young woman, something was beginning to change. In 1968, at the age of 16, Anneliese experienced her first unexplained convulsion. It happened suddenly. She collapsed at school and reported feeling as though she couldn't control her body. Doctors diagnosed her with temporal lobe epilepsy, a neurological condition that can cause seizures, hallucinations, and intense emotional experiences. She began receiving treatment and medication, but the episodes didn't stop. Over the next few years, Anneliese's condition grew worse. She began to experience not only physical convulsions, but also terrifying visions. She claimed to see faces, dark, twisted figures that would appear in her mind and around her. She reported hearing disembodied voices telling her she was damned and would rot in hell. These auditory and visual hallucinations terrified her, but in a devout household, they also carried spiritual weight. Doctors prescribed anticonvulsant drugs and antidepressants, but they seemed to have little effect. Her episodes became more frequent and intense. She developed symptoms that went beyond what her doctors considered typical for epilepsy. She grew withdrawn, plagued by feelings of guilt and worthlessness, convinced she had done something to invite evil into her life. Her family, who had always viewed the world through a spiritual lens, grew increasingly uneasy. To them, it wasn't just a medical condition. They believed their daughter was being tormented by something darker. The local priest was consulted early on, though the church was initially cautious. Exorcisms were rare and required formal approval. By her early 20s, Anneliese Michel was caught between two worlds. Doctors who believed her condition was rooted in neurological illness, and a family that believed she was under demonic attack. It was the beginning of a struggle that would end in tragedy and shape the debate over faith and medicine for decades to come. By the early 1970s, Anneliese Michel's life had shifted from quiet devotion to an increasingly desperate battle with something she and her family believed was evil. Though she continued receiving medical care for her epilepsy and psychiatric symptoms, the treatments offered little relief. Her convulsions grew more violent, and the disturbing visions returned with greater intensity. She began reporting a heavy, oppressive force pressing down on her chest at night, leaving her unable to move or breathe. Her hallucinations took on a more explicitly religious tone. She told those close to her that she heard voices, growling, mocking, calling her worthless, and claiming she was damned. her behavior changed too. She became more withdrawn, often sinking into long, silent spells of despair. She would pray obsessively and later expressed feelings of being controlled by something that wasn't her. Her family began to view these experiences not as symptoms of illness, but as signs of possession. Anneliese had been raised to believe in the reality of sin, the devil, and exorcism. For her parents, the idea that she was under demonic influence was not far-fetched. It was terrifying, but familiar. Priests were consulted. Initially, the local clergy urged caution. The Catholic Church had strict procedures for approving exorcisms. In the years following the Second Vatican Council, formal exorcisms were rare and required strong evidence of possession. Anneliese continued to receive psychiatric treatment during this time, but the family's frustration grew. Then the behaviors intensified. Anneliese developed an aversion to religious symbols. She would recoil at crucifixes and holy water, claiming they burned or angered whatever was inside her. She refused to enter churches, or when she did, she became rigid, agitated, or collapsed. Those who witnessed these episodes, including her family and visiting priests, described it as unlike anything they had seen before. She began to speak in what her family believed were demonic voices, low and guttural, far from her usual tone. There were claims that she understood languages she had never studied. Whether these were genuine phenomena or the effects of her illness is still debated today. In 1973, her mental and physical state deteriorated further. She stopped eating regularly, lost weight, and often spent nights on the floor in prayer. Her parents, convinced that medicine could not help her, intensified their efforts to persuade the church to intervene. After several evaluations, 2 priests eventually agreed to perform the ritual Romanum, the traditional Catholic rite of exorcism. For Anneliese Michel, the line between medical crisis and spiritual battle had been completely erased. In the eyes of her family, she was no longer just sick, she was possessed. And for the church, her case would soon become one of the most infamous exorcisms of the modern era.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Do you love the strange, the unexplained, and the downright terrifying? Horrifying History takes you on a chilling journey into the dark corners of the past, where history and horror collide. From haunted places and ghostly legends to unsolved mysteries and terrifyingly true stories, you will uncover the twisted facts that history books leave out. Who were the real monsters behind infamous legends? What dark secrets lie buried in the pages of history? Every episode, we reveal the eerie truths that will send shivers down your spine. Are you brave enough to face the darkness? Horrifying History, available now wherever you listen to your podcasts. But don't wait for too long. The past might just come looking for you. Listen if you dare.
In 1975, after years of medical treatment with little improvement and mounting pressure from the Michel family, the Catholic Church finally granted permission for an official exorcism. 2 priests were assigned to the case, Father Arnold Renz and Pastor Ernst Alt. They were experienced clergymen and they approached the ritual with solemn conviction. What followed over the next 10 months would become one of the most disturbing and controversial exorcism accounts in modern history. The priests performed the ritual romanum on her 67 times between September 1975 and July 1976. Each session lasted anywhere from 1 to 4 hours. These rituals were recorded on audio tape, and the recordings would later become chilling evidence in court. In those tapes, Anneliese can be heard screaming, growling, and speaking in what she claimed were the voices of multiple demons. She named them Lucifer, Judas Iscariot, Nero, Cain, Hitler, and others. The voices were low, guttural, and sometimes layered, as if several were speaking at once. Witnesses reported that during these exorcisms, Anneliese exhibited extraordinary strength despite her weakening body. She would thrash violently, resist restraint, and speak for hours without rest. Her face and body bore bruises and injuries from the violent sessions. Her parents and the priests believed the demons were fighting to keep control of her. Anneliese began refusing food and water. She insisted the demons would not allow her to eat. Over time, her weight plummeted. Her body grew frail, but the exorcisms continued. Each session seemed to blur the line further between faith and medical intervention. Doctors were not consulted during the exorcism period. Her family believed medicine had already failed her. The church followed a ritual steeped in centuries-old tradition: prayers, commands for the demons to depart, readings of scripture, the sign of the cross, and sprinkling of holy water. Anneliese would scream, curse, and convulse during these moments. According to the priests, she sometimes fell into periods of eerie calm between violent fits. But outside the circle of faith, her condition raised alarm. Some who heard of the case questioned why she was no longer under medical care. Others criticized the church for allowing such a prolonged ritual with no medical oversight. By early summer of 1976, Anneliese's physical state was deteriorating rapidly. She was severely malnourished, dehydrated, and exhausted. Yet the exorcisms continued almost weekly. For those who believed in possession, it was proof of the demon's grip. For skeptics, it was the devastating toll of untreated illness and prolonged spiritual warfare. What happened next would turn this private nightmare into an international headline and a courtroom. On July 1st, 1976, the grueling ordeal of Anneliese Michel came to a tragic end. After nearly a year of exorcism sessions and months of refusing to eat, Anneliese died in her family's home in Klingenberg, Germany. She was just 23 years old. At the time of her death, she weighed only 68 pounds. Her body was bruised, her knees calloused from hours spent kneeling in prayer, and she was too weak to stand on her own. The official cause of death was malnutrition and dehydration. It was a grim and preventable end to what had begun as a medical condition and evolved into a spiritual battleground. In the immediate aftermath, the Michel family contacted the local authorities and the case was quickly investigated. Her physical state, coupled with the long record of exorcisms, raised immediate legal questions. Prosecutors charged her parents, Josef and Anna Michel, along with the two priests, Father Arnold Rentz and Pastor Ernst Alt, with negligent homicide. Their reasoning was simple. Anneliese had been allowed to waste away under the belief she was possessed, rather than being treated by medical professionals. Her death was not only tragic, it was, in their view, preventable. The trial began in 1978 and drew massive media attention across Germany and beyond. It was not just a criminal case, it became a cultural and religious flashpoint. In the courtroom, two worlds collided: modern medicine and ancient belief. Prosecutors argued that the defendants had failed in their duty of care, letting a vulnerable young woman die because they believed in demons instead of doctors. They presented medical records showing that Anneliese had been diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy and psychosis. Doctors testified that, with proper medical treatment, she likely would have survived. The defense, on the other hand, leaned heavily on Anneliese's faith and her own reported experiences. Her parents and priests argued that they truly believed she was possessed. They insisted that her behavior during the exorcisms, her strength, her guttural voices, her violent reactions to religious objects could not be explained by medical science alone. They claimed they were fulfilling a spiritual duty, not neglecting her. Ultimately, the court found the priests and parents guilty of negligent homicide, but gave them suspended sentences, a punishment that reflected both the tragedy of the case and the belief that they had acted out of sincere, if misguided, faith. Anneliese's death ignited a global debate about the role of faith in medical crises. It wasn't just a local tragedy anymore. It was a case that forced the Catholic Church, doctors, and the public to confront the deadly consequences when science and religion collide. When the Exorcism of Anneliese Michel is stripped of legend, recordings, and religious framing, what emerges is a deeply tragic medical case. The skeptical perspective begins with the diagnosis she received years before the first exorcism ever took place: temporal lobe epilepsy. This condition can cause seizures, visual and auditory hallucinations, and a sensation often described by patients as a presence or force pressing down on them. Many of the frightening experiences that Anneliese reported, the weight on her chest, the visions, the voices, are well documented in medical literature. Psychiatrists who later reviewed her case also found signs of psychosis, likely intertwined with her neurological condition. As her seizures worsened, her symptoms expanded to include delusions with religious themes. This isn't unusual. In many cultures, people experiencing hallucinations often interpret them through the lens of their own beliefs. In Anneliese's case, growing up in a devout Catholic household meant that what might have been interpreted medically elsewhere was seen as evidence of demonic possession. Critically, she was under medical care at the beginning. She was prescribed anticonvulsants and antipsychotic medications, but when those didn't bring the relief she and her family hoped for, they turned increasingly to the church. From a skeptical standpoint, this was a fatal turning point. Instead of intensifying her medical treatment, they abandoned it for spiritual solutions. The recordings of her exorcisms are often cited as evidence of possession. In them, Anneliese growls, screams, and claims to be multiple entities, including historical figures like Judas and Nero. But psychiatrists have pointed out that such vocalizations are not uncommon in people experiencing psychotic breaks or severe trauma. The guttural voices can be explained by changes in vocal cord tension under stress, while her claims of multiple demons align with dissociative symptoms seen in some mental illnesses. Physical behaviors attributed to demonic strength, thrashing, resisting, self-injury, can also be explained by the adrenaline surges common during seizure activity or psychotic episodes. None of the phenomena observed required supernatural explanations. Many medical experts believe her death was not inevitable. It was the result of prolonged malnutrition and the absence of proper care. She wasn't just battling her illness. She was caught in a struggle between two opposing worldviews. The skeptical view doesn't dismiss the pain that Anneliese or her family experienced. Rather, it recognizes how easily sincere faith, fear, and misunderstanding of mental illness can lead to devastating consequences. Her death became a case study in what happens when medical science is overshadowed by spiritual interpretation. For many, the story of Anneliese Michel isn't evidence of the demonic. It's evidence of how powerful belief can be and how dangerous it can become when it replaces critical care.
Do you love the strange, the unexplained, and the downright terrifying? Horrifying History takes you on a chilling journey into the dark corners of the past, where history and horror collide. From haunted places and ghostly legends to unsolved mysteries and terrifyingly true stories, you will uncover the twisted facts that history books leave out. Who were the real monsters behind infamous legends? What dark secrets lie buried in the pages of history? Every episode, we reveal the eerie truths that will send shivers down your spine. Are you brave enough to face the darkness? Horrifying History, available now wherever you listen to your podcasts. But don't wait for too long. The past might just come looking for you. Listen if you dare.
The death of Anneliese Michel did not mark the end of her story. It marked the beginning of its transformation into legend. Her case remains one of the most widely discussed exorcism accounts of the 20th century, not only because of the chilling details of the rituals themselves, but also because of the cultural impact they left behind. In the years following her death, the Catholic Church came under intense scrutiny. Although exorcisms had been quietly performed for centuries, this was one of the first times the world saw their tragic consequences in full public view. The Church did not deny that the exorcisms had taken place, but the controversy surrounding Anneliese's death prompted internal reflection and greater caution. In the decades that followed, the Vatican placed tighter restrictions on performing exorcisms, requiring medical evaluations and psychiatric consultations before approval. At the same time, the story became a fixture in popular culture. Books, documentaries, and articles revisited the case, often focusing on the more sensational elements: the tapes of her screaming, the names of the demons, and her harrowing final days. In 2005, the film The Exorcism of Emily Rose introduced Anneliese Michel's story to a global audience. Though fictionalized, the movie was directly inspired by her life and death, blending courtroom drama with supernatural horror. It reignited debates about the reality of possession versus mental illness for a new generation. For believers, Anneliese became a symbol of faith under attack. Some view her as a martyr who suffered to reveal the reality of demonic possession. Pilgrims visit her grave in Klingenberg, leaving flowers, rosaries, and prayers. Some exorcists still cite her case as evidence of the devil's work in the modern world. For skeptics and mental health advocates, her story serves as a warning. It highlights the dangers of stigmatizing psychiatric illness and replacing medical intervention with spiritual solutions. It also underscores how cultural and religious beliefs can shape how people experience and interpret psychological symptoms. Even today, the tapes of Anneliese's exorcisms circulate online, fueling endless arguments between believers and non-believers. Few cases blur the line between faith and science as sharply as this one. It is a story that lives on not because it provides answers, but because it forces people to confront uncomfortable questions. What do we do when our beliefs conflict with medical reality? How far should faith go? And who bears responsibility when faith leads to tragedy? More than 40 years after her death, Anneliese Michel remains both a symbol of devotion and a case study in the consequences of misplaced trust. Her story has outlived the people who knew her, echoing in court records, church archives, horror films, and cultural memory. a haunting reminder of what happens when belief and reality collide. That brings us to the end of episode 47 of The Dark Record. We followed the heartbreaking case of Anneliese Michel, a young woman whose suffering became a global flashpoint between faith and medicine. To some, her death was proof of possession. To others, it was a tragedy born from untreated illness, cultural belief, and a failure of care. Whatever one chooses to believe, her story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about where faith ends and responsibility begins. Remembered, retold, and now added to the record. Next time, we'll step away from the realm of faith and into the modern world of mystery, with a story about a phone number that some say brings death to everyone who owns it. We'll examine the cursed phone number. Until then, I'm Lyle Perez, and this has been the Halloween Podcast presenting The Dark Record. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps keep the show alive and weird. You can also explore sources, extras, and more at our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Halloween Podcast or at our website, thehalloweenpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, keep your eyes on the shadows, and remember, some battles aren't fought in the light of day, but in the quiet places where faith and fear collide. Have a good night.
Do you love the strange, the unexplained, and the downright terrifying? Horrifying History takes you on a chilling journey into the dark corners of the past, where history and horror collide. From haunted places and ghostly legends to unsolved mysteries and terrifyingly true stories, you will uncover the twisted facts that history books leave out. Who were the real monsters behind infamous legends? What dark secrets lie buried in the pages of history? Every episode, we reveal the eerie truths that will send shivers down your spine. Are you brave enough to face the darkness? Horrifying History, available now wherever you listen to your podcasts. But don't wait for too long. The past might just come looking for you. Listen if you dare.